You're listening to Make It, a podcast by Bonsai Creative that helps aspiring professionals in film get where they're going faster by dissecting the advice, knowledge, and insights of professional creatives in the film industry. I'm your host, Chris Barkley, and with me today is my good friend and Make It podcast co-host, Nicholas Buggs. Hello, Chris here with another episode of the Make It podcast, and this is an Indie Talk week, so that means I have my co-founder and good friend with me, Nicholas Buggs. Nick, say hello. I appreciate you doing that in honor of the return of football season.
And in honor of one of the very early episodes of The Office.
Yes.
You know, you kind of wonder, with stuff like that, is it still cool to do?
I don't think so.
Yeah, see. Man, you just blame me for the audience,
but
man.
I think you're going to do it anyway.
Exactly.
Which is fine. Which is fine. That's who you are. I like it.
Yeah, but it's like when you do something like that, or you mention like a movie, like, oh man, I love The Princess Bride, and somebody's like, oh, you're dating yourself. Mm-hmm. You're dating yourself there. I'm like, is that a problem? I love that movie. Like, you got a problem with that?
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah, there's a lot of hypocrisy out there. Like, if I say I love The Princess Bride, I'm dating myself. But if there's like some young kid that's like, hey, so what's your favorite movie? And they're like, oh, I love Casablanca. They're like, oh, you're so refined. You're so cultured. You're so cultured. How do you? And you know that kid's bullshitting.
Exactly.
They know they like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. And then I heard somebody said it the other day. I was like, I can't remember who I was talking to. I was like, hey, what are your favorite movies? And I think they named 4 movies I'd never heard of. And I'm like, come on. Come on. Actually, You know what it was? One of the movies was they said, oh, I love The Dictator. And I just thought to myself immediately, Sacha Baron Cohen. I said,
exactly what I thought.
Because they said their favorite movie of all time was Airplane. So I was like, okay, so you're a comedy guy. I like Airplane. Airplane's like, this is outside of the box. I enjoy this. Let's have this conversation. We're drinking wine. Let's keep going. And I said, so you're a Sacha Baron Cohen fan? He goes, no, I hate Sacha Baron Cohen. I was like, what? He goes, I'm talking about Charlie Chaplin's The Dictator. I said, motherfucker. Like, really?
Yeah. And by the way, for I'm gonna tell you, if that person legit said my favorite movie is The Dictator, then they're tripping, because that movie by Charlie Chaplin is called The Great Dictator.
There you go.
See, which is why that caused confusion when you asked the question. So
that's right.
Just putting it out there.
And I like what you're doing. I see what you're trying to put down. The subtlety of it is nice. I like the passive aggressiveness of it, because it would be like me saying my favorite movie is The Princess Groom. What? The Princess Groom? Yeah, the movie with Carrie Ells and,
right.
Andre the Giant. And
or if you just said The Bride. Right.
The Bride.
My favorite movie, The Bride.
The Bride. Oh, with Jennifer Lopez?
Exactly. No, man. The Princess Bride. You got to put this, The Great Dictator.
Yeah, actually, Jennifer Lopez is in The Wedding Planner. But
yeah, she is. She is for sure.
But that came to my mind. So exactly. If it's your favorite movie, if it's in your top 3, you don't get the title wrong. You don't get the name of it wrong.
Thank you. Exactly.
Yeah.
You're being pretentious. It's all good. I'm not going to say it out loud.
My favorite movie is American Gorgeous. American Gorgeous.
Right. It's probably a movie. It probably is.
American Beauty.
Porn.
American Beauty. So we are in a very unique week outside of sort of the return of America's major sports. We also we have the grand experiment happening right in front of us in the movie business. We have Tenet on the left being released worldwide in theaters. People are going out. That's right.
That was the audience.
Yep.
That.
Yep, I did. I love that. And then to the right, we have Mulan, who has decided, and Disney has decided to release on their Disney Plus app exclusively for $30, $29.99 to be specific. And we're going to see which concept wins out. There are pros and cons to each. Tell us about Tenet, Nick.
Yeah, so I just, you follow the news and, I think everybody's been waiting for this movie to come out, right? It's like, it's going to come out and then it's not, and then it's going to come out and it's not. And the trailer's got everybody, clenching their booties like, whoa, this is the best thing since, Endgame. And, it comes out. And it comes out in the theaters.
I admit my booty was clenched.
Yeah, for real. Like, and it comes out in the theaters, right? But like, what theaters? Like, what theaters is this movie in? I don't know how many theaters, where those theaters are, but I heard it was a limited release. So I'm thinking, it's kind of like a preview. You get all the people in Hollywood to see it and comment on it. I get it, right? You put it out there for that. And then, you turn and you look, and this movie's made $208 million.
Yeah.
Wow. Like, what? Wait, what? Huh? It's a limited release and it's made how much? So I think the budget was 205.
Yeah.
Right. So it's already in its, first couple of weeks making bank, and that's worldwide. Right. So opening weekend, it made, I think in gross was 20 million, and then US Canada it's made 30 million. All right. So US Canada it's made 30 million. Worldwide it's made 208 million.
Mm-hmm. And that just has to do with leadership in other countries and what their policy on theaters is and how important that economy is to those countries. They probably need about 150 million more in box office to make the movie profitable, all said and done. Because as you know, that 208 million is cut in half by those big box theaters. But it's going to make its money back. As a matter of fact, there's a saying in the movie business, which is that every movie makes its money back. The question is it going to make it back in 2 years or 200?
Yeah, but and I question. Here's one of the things I question. Right, I don't know enough about it. I might have to do some, depending on which side of the camp you are, it's either research or research. So I'm going to have to do some research on this to figure out, are they changing the game on what counts as a box office, ticket during COVID?
What do you mean? Explain that. Go into that a little bit.
Like what if it shows at a like a drive-in theater or some new type of viewing experience? I imagine places like, let's say like in China, they were like, all right, we're gonna put this movie out in like, let's call it like Tiananmen Square. Like we're gonna put something out in this big open space, and you get like 1,000 people sitting back to back. Because if you sit back to back, you can't get COVID, right? Because if you sneeze, it's going to go straight forward. It doesn't go back.
Is that the physics problem where two trains going in opposite directions at the same speed? Exactly. And one person can shoot a bullet from the back of it and it'll never reach the other person?
It'll never reach the other one. So if you sneeze, it only goes forward. All right, just letting y'all know. So you got 1,000 people, right, back to back, and they purchase tickets and they go see this movie. Does that count as box office? Now, I'm just saying that, and here's the other thing that I'm curious about. I'm not saying it's happening. I'm just curious about is that we know that there are some musicians who have bought their own music in order to go platinum. Mm-hmm. Okay, they just back in the day, they buy their own CDs, right? Like that's what they would do.
Well, so, there's another thing that happens in the music business, which the reason I'm qualified to talk on this is because I started in entertainment in the music business with my own singing group named Solace. And the way that sales worked back in the day, like pre-Napster and maybe a little bit afterwards, is that you got to report shipped numbers, not sold numbers. So if at the time, let's say Sam Goody, I'm dating myself.
Oh, snap.
let's say Sam Goody or Blockbuster Music. Oh my God! I did it. I did it twice. I did it twice.
Did it again.
If they wanted, if they wanted Nick Bugs' latest album, "Sexual Chocolate," and they wanted 3 million copies of it, then you could report that you went 3 times platinum, even though you haven't sold those copies. They just have them, and depending on the contract between the buyer and the seller, there might be a cap on how many the seller can return back to or the buyer can return back to the seller. Meaning some of those you could genuinely say, hey, those are out the door. Those cannot be returned. So whether somebody buys them or not is the ultimate buyer's problem, right? That's sell those. And you're good to go. So anyway, that was a sidebar just to say that there are a lot of games that get played, and like the whole click farm in China thing that drives followers, social media, and the whole journalism business right now is mind-boggling. I would tell anybody to go Google click farm China and find out what really runs and keeps the doors open at your favorite newspaper. Anyway, go ahead, Nick.
But that's the type of thing that I'm talking about. It's like, again, I don't know that it's happening, right? But we know that the system can be gamed, right? It's designed that way. And, not to take anything away from what is potentially a phenomenal film, but I do, in my mind, with this limited release, again, I understand that most of it's not even happening here, right? Again, in USA, in Canada, 30 million out of 200, right, is what they're getting at the box office. But I look at that, I'm like, really, that many people overseas, like, flock to see this movie? Or is there some game afoot which isn't necessarily nefarious, right? It's more like we can help save the industry with one of these great films, right? Let's just say it's a great film, and letting people know that, hey, look, it's still doing well theatrically. Like it's safe to a degree to come back. And if you're making great content, it's going to win, right? So let's game it just to get people comfortable again. And, don't let everything go straight to Netflix, right? Don't let it all come out in streaming. There's still a platform here for theaters.
Yeah, that is interesting, because essentially what you're saying is, hey, 55 million of that 208 came out of North America. But I think when you think, well, I get what you're trying to say, but think about China. It's the second largest box office in the world. The United States really hasn't opened their theaters, and people really haven't gotten comfortable going nationwide, especially in the big epicenters like New York and California, where there's a lot of traffic to theaters in general. Chicago. China is the second biggest box office in the world. And then what's around China, right? You have South Korea, which is a massive movie market, India, which is a massive movie market. And so there's a chance that they could have brought in that money, at the box office. But I like your question before, like, what do tickets cost there? Is it a premium item there, or is it a discounted item there? What is that money like? Has the US dollar been so inflated through COVID that the exchange rate between the monies is no longer favorable for the dollar in every place, so that you're actually getting more dollars for less viewers? You see what I'm saying? So you can report $208 million because the dollar is worth less than it was, at any point previous, because it continues to get devalued as we print more money to flood the market and, prop up the economy or whatever. So the other reason is outside of sort of the thought that there could be some, it's a highly shrouded industry, Nick. So yeah, there could be some bullshit at play, but I think if you want to look at it on the up and up and say, okay, this is possibly what's happening here. The other thing is they have very little competition. Can you name another movie that's out at the theater to compete against it?
Oh yeah, not at all.
Right.
It's just those numbers, in a COVID world, seem crazy. And even when I look at it, like like you said, there's some bullshiggity going on. Like I said, I don't necessarily think it's nefarious. Right? It could just be an invitation. Like they are working their industry magic to invite other people to show their movies in theaters. Like, hey, look, we're doing it. You can too.
Yeah. And so let's talk about Mulan. I'm fascinated by this, as I am Tenet, by the way. And Tenet is the movie that I'm probably most excited to see over the summer. Mulan releases on Disney Plus for $29.99. And on its face, it is a better value than going to the theater. Now, it requires you to download Disney Plus. And I think that it's important for me not to live in a vacuum or in some myopic bubble and assume that everybody has the same resource allocation, right? So there are a lot of people, like 80% of the United States, who have to literally make the choice. Am I going to keep Netflix or am I going to keep HBO Max? Right. And before you know it, every streamer will have a price associated with it. And you'll have to, you'll pay as much in subscription fees as you were paying in cable. And so you thought you were cutting the cord and they just followed you to where you went and then put a different price on it and then allowed you to, and then made it modular. Essentially, they allowed you to customize your viewing experience by picking which content you want. Right? Like you mentioned The Office earlier. It's going to be very interesting for Netflix when Peacock takes The Office away in January. Because all said and done, The Office, which is so crazy when you think about the money that Netflix has poured into original content, that The Office is the number one streamed show really across the board consistently for the entire year of 2020. On Netflix. Now, The Crown is coming back in the winter, and The Crown is great, so they're hoping that will boost it, and that will. But they need a plan to sort of adjust to losing The Office. And by the way, Reed Hastings has a book that is coming out, and everybody in film should go get it because I think you'll learn a lot about Netflix and about the business as it is today, from that book. So, but more on that later. So anyway. It releases here. You download Disney Plus, you pay the $30, and look, your entire family can watch it for that one flat rate price. So to spend $30 normally, that'd be 2 tickets at the theater, basically on average across the nation. And when I watched Mulan, we had a whole room full of people. we had like 10 or 11 people in the room watching it all together. That would have been hundreds of dollars the traditional way. But that's the consumer point of view. From Disney's point of view, these are corporate executives. They're saying, well, wait a second. We just lost all that profit margin. We just lost all that revenue. Had we let Mulan out in the theater like Tenet did, then we could be boasting $400 million week one profit because Mulan is something that can be watched by everyone. So the question is, and this is what I'm so fascinated about is will Disney will they prioritize and value the exclusivity they have and their ability to take all their movies and run them on Disney Plus as premium features of their service and have all the ancillary benefits of data collection, multiples of millions of net new subscribers and downloads of their application, and just everything that sort of comes with constant, viewership of their technology, of their streaming service? Or will they prioritize the theater experience that's far, far more profitable even after, the box office split, because they can still take the movie and put it back on their service later and then get all those gains as well, even charging for it if they wanted to on Disney Plus, later down the line. So it's a really interesting economic problem, Nick, that I think Disney is facing, or maybe even opportunity.
Yeah, and I think so. I haven't seen it yet, and I'm just letting you know that I am in the camp of $30 for a movie. What? Yeah, that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. I was at that for $20 for a movie. And here's why. Because my family hasn't been into the theatrical experience, like going to the movie theater, in years. Like, it hasn't been a COVID thing. We just haven't been going to the movies. Why? Because I got a 5-year-old. Yeah. And last year,
why do that to all the other people in the theater?
Well, why do that to us?
I remember I went to go see Passion of the Christ, and people were like really riled up about it religiously. And I remember I went to see the 10 o'clock screening of it, and multiple people had brought their babies and children to come watch Passion of the Christ as a lesson, as like a sermon at night. Anyway, it was not the kids were terrified.
Of course they were,
or bored, horrible. And they were screaming in there. It was quite the scene.
Yeah, but like I said, we got a 5-year-old, right? So 4 and 3 years old, she might get bored, mid movie, right? And then that's on my wife, right? She's gonna get on my wife's lap. Tell her she wants to go to the bathroom, tell her she's hungry, tell her she wants. So it's like, it's just, we're not doing that, right? We're just going to do it at home. We're going to watch whatever. I don't care what it is. We're going to watch it at home, right? So we got the home theater situation going on. We got a, decent sized screen and some sound, it's good. It works. We got a bathroom. We can pause. Like, we do all the things at home, right? So we've really doubled down on the home theater experience. So we haven't been doing that. We haven't been going out. So, I hear it a lot. People saying, well, if I went to the theater, then it would be, like you said, 2 tickets, $30. It's worth it. I'm like, wait, no, hadn't been worth it for me in a minute.
Well, it sounds like you're making the opposite argument, that you like being at home and therefore it's worth whatever price they charge because you don't have to leave with your 5-year-old.
No. I'm saying there's 378,000 other options for me to watch.
Oh, right? Got it.
For free or for $9.99 that I'm worth it. If I want to buy it, or I rent it for $3.99. Like,
but it's not first run content, to be fair.
But it doesn't matter.
So you're saying is you're not valuing the packaged sort of experience of watching something while it's relevant.
No, and especially because the social experience around it is kind of like died. For us, and especially in the COVID times, right? Like, it's one thing when, let's say, like my kids, let's say my nephews, right? So my kids' cousins, they saw a movie. And then my kids would go hang out with the cousins and they'd be talking about how great the movie was and all this stuff. And then I get pressured into buying the movie for my kids because I don't want them to feel left out. Well, they haven't hung out with the cousins in a little while, right? There's no conversations about how great Mulan was. So my kids are good. My kids aren't physically going to school anymore, right? There's no conversations about what they could have missed out on. My kids are good, right?
But for you personally, had it been Tenet, you might have spent the money.
Might have, but the other part about that is this. With Tenet, if it had come out streaming, what you're asking me for with the $30 is you're asking me to buy it. Right. So you're suggesting to me that I want to watch it again.
Yes.
That's the kicker for me with all these movies, is that will I want to watch it again? Right. And with my kids, with myself, there's honestly very few movies that I'm just like, oh man, that was so great, I'm gonna have to watch it again.
Yeah.
So even movies that we end up buying because there's no rental option, I get mad. Right. I did it for my kids, but then I'm mad because we don't want to watch it again. The kids just won't. They're like, we just watched that 3 years ago. We don't want to watch that again. I'm like, y'all made me buy that movie for $24.99. Y'all gonna sit down at breakfast and you're gonna watch the movie again.
But like, it's true. I still buy Blu-rays and DVDs, but I have to admit that a lot of it is very emotional. It's not logical.
You gotta have a tie to it. You gotta have a tie to it, man.
I bought Interstellar on Blu-ray because I just wanted to know I could watch Interstellar again if I ever needed to cry or weep. And then also be blown away by the cinematography and all this stuff. It is unbelievable. I just watched it. Now here's the thing. When a movie is great, you will watch it again. So It's like, I hear what you're saying. It's like, and it fits for 80% of all the film that's made. But for that other 20%, so when Interstellar came out, I watched it with 2 or 3 other groups. So I'd watched it in the theater. I spent that money 3 times. Then I bought the Blu-ray, and I've seen it twice at home with the Blu-ray. It's not a short movie, bro. This is like a 3-hour film.
I know.
So I've dedicated a decent swath of my life to this film.
Right.
And because it's great.
Right. That's all about that experience. It wasn't really just about the movie. It's about the groups. Right. Even more so. So like for me at home, let's get it back to Mulan. Right. Like what am I going to get for that $30? Like that's the deal. Like I'm going to get this movie, which first off, that movie's PG-13.
Yeah. I don't know why. I mean, I guess violence maybe.
Yeah, but come on, man. How are you going to do that? Like Disney went on a limb with that because Disney movies aren't PG-13 like that. Like not Mulan. You know what I'm saying? Not like you're going to make Beauty and the Beast PG-13. No. I mean,
well, if it's live action and
no, none of those movies are PG-13, dude.
Like, I know, but if you make it, but if you make it live action, then all of a sudden there's a little, R&R in the bedroom with Beast and Bill.
Oh, you talking about if they did it.
If they made it live action, yeah, it would probably be PG-13, right? Because you would want to, when it's people, you kind of have to show the passion.
I mean, you don't have to because Beauty and the Beast already came out and it was PG. Cinderella came out, it was PG. Aladdin came out, it was PG. And, now this one came out PG-13. My point is, now they shut my kids out of watching the movie because it's PG-13. So besides that, it's $30 and the experience isn't there. And I cannot guarantee that my children will watch this thing again. So when I look at spending my $30, I'm like, what am I investing in? Right. Mm-hmm. So with you had 10, 20 people come over to watch this and have an experience around the movie. Now, if I get some family members who want to come watch, okay, I'll go and do it because I'm creating an experience for the family. I will do it.
It's like buying a pay-per-view boxing match.
Exactly.
Or UFC fight.
That's the key.
But we spent $100 to buy that.
Right. So that's it. With
Mulan, you spend $30. Everybody comes over. They have a great time. Somebody brings wine. That already cancels it out, right?
Exactly. So, but real quick, though. Some of my in-laws, when we told them so we got a little backyard sitch going on, a little theater situation going on, right? And we were like, okay, we might do the Mulan thing on the theater in the backyard. And my in-laws were like, great. That sounds awesome. Let us know when you're going to do it. We'll be over there. And my wife was like, cool. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. And then it was like crickets. And my wife didn't understand. I was sitting there like looking at her like she crazy. And she didn't understand why I'm looking at her. So when I got a second away, right, I got to talk to her on the side. And I was like, baby, you got to sell tickets.
Yeah.
We gonna make this an experience. I'll make popcorn and all that stuff, but they gotta buy in. It's $17.99. You got popcorn, $8.99 per, popcorn.
I think I love that, and I think there's nothing wrong with you being entrepreneurial.
Exactly.
I always love an entrepreneur, but here's the thing. Here's what it really comes down to. It doesn't even come down to me and you. The reason Mulan was a greenlit movie is because they have captured an audience that was already there,
of course,
that they knew was looking forward to this movie more than Tenet, more than any other movie. They were looking forward to this movie. People have been tracking its release day for months. And so while me and you might look at it from different perspectives and say, well, that's me and you, I don't think Mulan is to black guys. I just don't think it's for us. And so right. I think going back to the issues, I think Disney has a prioritization sort of economic consideration on their hand, because if this ends up being massively successful, then it's like, hey, we have a zero margin product, right? It doesn't cost us anything for more and more people to watch our product, to consume it. We take a hit a little bit on the profit side, potentially on box office, but we control the game. So I'm wondering how that will play out. Whereas with Tenet, you can see it's very, very much driven by studio and by Christopher Nolan and the sort of Nolan brothers. Like, hey, this was meant to be seen in a theater. This was meant to be seen a certain way. And I think there's a lot of that in there too. And that is also, very valid. So we'll see how this plays out and see what we get in the future, or maybe we get a combo platter, a little bit of both. The second thing we want to talk about today is this idea of producing content where you are. And you've heard us say that before. It's something that we have repeated since our Ryan Hartsock interview, where he mentioned produce where you are, and some of his mentors had shared that advice with him. Produce where you are doesn't mean shoot where you are, Nick. It's very different. And I think if you're going to be an independent film, and you have to look at trying to make your movie as inexpensively as possible and trying to get to sort of equity zero if you can, meaning the movie's paid for by soft dollars almost in its entirety before you have to go out and get money from angels and private equity or individuals. And so I don't know if you have or what your thoughts on that are, Nick, but we look at the tax incentives across the board, and I don't know why you get the sense that a lot of independent filmmakers don't want to leave the place they're in. They're going to shoot where they are, and sometimes that's to the detriment of their film, Nick.
Yeah, and I think so. I hear you, right? And but I still believe that the whole idea of producing where you are, it still holds water even today in this kind of crazy mixed up world that we're in. And it's not really about just, I don't know, being lazy or, just doing what's familiar. It's more about, I think you have a greater opportunity to engage an audience, engage a community where you are. Like, your hometown, right? People, your family has connections, your friends have connections. You have people who are cheerleading for you. You've got that where you are. Also, you have people who, also are from where you are, and they're trying to do the same thing, right? They're trying to either level up or they're trying to get opportunities, and there's a greater chance for you to connect with them and make content. So I think when you produce where you are, the idea is, it isn't just like you said, it's not a cop out. Right. And it's not like you're not trying to take advantage of those things that exist elsewhere. Like if you film in Puerto Rico, maybe you get like a 30% tax incentive versus somewhere else where you get 15. It's like the idea that if you produce where you are, you can leverage the resources that are available to you there, and you have the potential to leverage an audience. And I feel like that's one of the main things that indie filmmakers need. Is it isn't just the good content that you create, it's also the audience that you're bringing to that content. Mm-hmm. And, so when you produce where you are, you're saying that I am from this place, and this is content that speaks to the experiences of this place. It speaks to the culture of this place. And it's a lot easier to get the audience to come out, see your stuff, than it is if you're like, you know what, in order to make this thing, I need to head out to Hollywood. Or like we talked about earlier, there's a lot of stuff happening in Georgia. Pinewood Studios is there. I think, Avengers is probably shot there. Like so much stuff is happening in Georgia these days. But if you pick up and go to Georgia and you try to compete with the people who are filming in Georgia, that might not work out for you. Right. So producing where you are is about leveraging your resources, leveraging the community, and building an audience where you are for the content that you have. I think it still holds water because of that. Yeah. And Georgia's a unique situation. Most of the movies that are blockbusters are made in Canada. And then right after that is Georgia. And Georgia's unique because, they do a transferable tax credit. They have a 20%
tax credit, which seems like, whoa, why would anyone want to go there if it's 20%? Well, you get a 10% uplift if you put the Made in Georgia logo, which is why you always see it on every TV show and movie that's made in Georgia, because who would turn down an additional 10% just to add a logo at the end of a credit that maybe you see it, maybe you don't. But the biggest thing to me is that they don't have a cap. And there are only a handful of states that don't have an incentive cap. Connecticut is one, Illinois is one, Massachusetts is one, but most places have a cap on how much you can get. Like, so for example, Tennessee, where I am, they have a $22 million cap, which means there would be, with a 25% tax credit, you can get a 5%. You can get up to 30% in Tennessee if you use a local crew. But if you have your own crew, it's 25%. And that basically means there's no reason whatsoever for you to make a film that costs more than $88 million. And so you're like, well, that's a lot of money. And you're right. So you can make films with $88 million in Tennessee before it doesn't make any sense. But if you're a giant blockbuster, if you're, like you mentioned in Avengers, well, your movie's going to cost 200, or Tenet, like we said earlier, it's going to cost 200 million. And so you need to make it in a place that doesn't have an incentive cap. And so, but in indie film, I don't think you have an issue. I think it's one of these things where you want to look at the percentage and the soft dollar type and say, well, how much do I have to shoot there? And how much do I have to spend there in order to get the incentive? And I think if you can decide that as an independent film, then you can make smarter decisions. So if I want to produce where I am and I produce here in Nashville, I might want to shoot part of my movie in Massachusetts where I only have to spend $50,000 there to get a 25% tax return. I think that's my point. But to your point, I think I go back to the Terry Ritter interview from last week where she's like, okay, I think we're going to see a ton of web series come out. And web series work when you produce where you are, Nick. That's
right. And I think that's where, so I basically asked the question to, people listening right now. It's like, are you shifting? Are you adjusting? Are you looking for opportunities to make it, in the industry and saying, if you read the tea leaves and the tea leaves are saying web series, are you flexible? Are you agile enough to switch into a web series and out of maybe the feature film that you had thought would be the best thing since sliced bread? And the reason why I think, web series is such a great idea outside of even just the advice of, Terry Ritter, who's, been in the industry for many a year, has started her own, talent agency. It's because it's content, right? It's a lot of content. It's more content than a single film, right? Mm-hmm. So we look at a single film, what do you get? Like 80 to 90 minutes, right? So that's an hour and a half. And independent filmmakers will often bank their entire filmmaking career on that one film. Whereas a web series could be, now with Quibi, what is it, 10 minutes? But like you could go
sometimes 5.
You could go anywhere from, let's say 5 minutes to 30 minutes, maybe an hour on a web series. And you're producing tons of content, right? And what's the value of producing tons of content is that you get to make mistakes. Right. And then people who are watching get to be along for the ride. Right. Like that's the thing. Like some people can be with you like, I don't know about that one. But if they had done this a little bit differently, you start to get a little bit better. They're like, oh, OK, they fixed their game up a little bit. Now they're calling their friends and, hey, you should check this thing out. It started out a little wonky, but hey, they're getting their stuff together. And then there's just content after content after content. There's episode after episode after episode. You and I had the conversation about what's taking over the game right now, even on Netflix, is all these social influencers, right? People on Instagram, Miranda Sings. I think she was big on Instagram.
And now she was big on YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube. That's what. Yeah, she was big on YouTube, and now she's got at least 2 films I think that are on. I think 1 series and 1 film that's on Netflix, and then you've got different folks that are on TikTok or other places that are getting deals that are showing up on Netflix. Like it's about content, right? These people are building audiences around content. And for the indie filmmaker, that's potentially the switch right now, right? Switch out of the idea that one film is going to get you to where you want to go. No, maybe it's just a series of content where you just get better and better and better over time. That's the thing that's going to get you there. So yeah, the idea of doing a web series, I think, is an awesome idea. I think it gives you more options for distribution. You could distribute on YouTube if you wanted to. You could distribute it on TikTok or Instagram, depending on how long your content is. It just gives you more options for getting your content in front of people, gives you more options for building an audience, which is really hard to do when you're doing just a single independent film. Again, you look at an hour and 30 minutes or an hour and 20 minutes versus, 1,000 hours versus content that someone can develop with a web series.
Yeah. And with their phone, quite frankly, and maybe a gimbal and a tripod and two soft lights, if they wanted to get down to that. I think we might look back at COVID and say this was the trigger that legitimized web series and different types of content in ways we never imagined before. Because if we go back to 2019, we always look at web series as lesser than. We say, okay, this is somebody, it was basically a TV star's version of creating a short. It's like, okay, you made a short film so you can have a concept for a feature, or you just need to, keep busy. So you made a short film. And that's what a web series was like. It was like, oh, you made a web series. You're a comedic actor. You want to have your own pilot and you keep chucking along and hopefully somebody sees your web series and gives you a shot to do something bigger. Well, now you don't need to do anything bigger. Now the web series is your shot, and you can make it where you're at. And it's like this thing where we all got used to watching people on digital devices and even over Zoom and watching their lives, like just really consuming their lives. And you see all these TikTok stars that have emerged, and a lot of those stars are truly confused because they're so young and I don't know what it is. It's just people wanting to see what I'm doing every day. There's a voyeuristic nature to it that can be taken advantage of if you're a filmmaking creative, because I think that a lot of the stars we talk about right now, they're not filmmaking creatives. They have a team because they have a bunch of followers and they have agents. But when they started, they were just a kid, like doing stuff on their phone, and really didn't have that type of background. So for those that have that background, they want to create a web series, doesn't have to actually be a web series where you go to a website to see it. It can just be you creating content that people enjoy, and that you have a set day that you come out with. So similar to what Andrew Schulz, the comedian, does. He releases a monologue every Saturday, and that monologue gets watched by 3 to 5 million people every Saturday, and you can just count on that. Okay. And then that drives everything else that he's doing. So, and by the way, those are brilliant and hilarious. And, everyone should go watch Andrew Schulz's monologues that he lets out on Saturday on Instagram and on YouTube. But yeah. And then the other thing I'll touch on that you said is distribution.
Yep.
The distribution rabbit hole goes much deeper than any of us really can imagine. We think about the big boys that we mentioned on social media, but there are over 300 social media sites alone. Podcasting has blown up in this year because people have more free time to listen to stuff, and that's driven the industry to create some big players like Spotify and Apple, of course, and Stitcher, et cetera. But it's and all these multivariate sort of podcast networks all around the country. But also it's because there's more distribution points that have been created. And now you can put your podcast into like 100 different places. So every day you wake up, if you're a filmmaker, you can put your web series or your web content or digital content in a new place every day you wake up and say, okay, I'm going to exploit that spot. Now I'm going to exploit that spot. I'm going to go to that spot and really create the future. So I'm with Terry Ritter. I'm with you. I'm excited to see what happens. I think produce where you are is a valid statement, but shoot where you are It doesn't have to be. I think when it comes to shoot where you are, it's shoot your film in a way in which you won't be in a ton of debt and pain should your film not do as great as you hoped it was going to do.
A lot of filmmakers, and we'll say indie filmmakers, will spend a lot of time paying attention to what's outside of their industry, right? Like outside of their market. Let's put it that way. Not outside of the industry, but outside of their market. And, basically it's like watching the red carpet, right? Watching all the things that are happening. But that club, right, is like 10 steps removed from where they are. Mm-hmm. And I think for us, it's like, okay, how do we relate what's happening in that club to the indie filmmaker and how the indie filmmaker can excel, how they can get to that next level, or how they can learn lessons from what's happening in that space. And I think that's why we geek out. Like we could go on forever about this stuff because it's like we're paying attention to that thread.
Right.
Right. Like we're not starstruck by stuff.
Exactly.
Right. Like that's not the point. Yeah. Like we're not sitting here, oh, Mulan, oh, Tenet. No. What does that mean for us? Like, what does that mean for the indie filmmaking community and the conversation around what people are watching and how does that apply? Like, that's us. That's what we do. I think that's why we get all excited about this stuff.
Yeah, no question. Because even the conversation we just had about producing where you are for a feature film or shooting where you are for a feature film versus the sort of next wave of content, which is short form digital content and web series, the question I have coming out of it for independent filmmakers and for this audience is how can we get to a place where we talk to governments about creating incentives for those types of content pieces so that you don't have to make a feature film in order to get a soft dollar rebate. What can you do about digital content that's being created or web content that's being created where you are actually hiring people and bringing in tourism around your programming? So maybe for another conversation, Nick, but that's a big question that jumped to my mind. Do you have any final thoughts for this audience as we wrap up this Indie Talk?
Well, I will say, if you decide to do the Mulan thing for $30, then make it an experience. Invite some people over who have been COVID tested or the COVID trust. I think that's a new thing. If you COVID trust them, let them in the house. But make an event about it and get the most out of your money. But final thoughts to my audience, to the folks that are out there, the wonderful indie creatives that inspire us to do what we do every day. I'll just say, be better, be creative, and be engaged.
100%. And as always, you can find us on social media ourselves, on Instagram, on Twitter at _Bonsai Creative. You can find us on Facebook by searching for Bonsai Creative. We'll come right up. If you have questions, concerns, feedback for us, we love all that stuff. You can email us at contact@bonsai.film. So it's BONSAI.FILM. And we'll get back to you on that for sure. Last but not least, please do visit www.bonsai.film. We have a plethora of resources there for you. And if you're working on a feature film or a project and you want to get more of this bonsai goodness in your life, you can also set up a consultation with us at our website, which is, again, www.bonsai.film. Nick, thank you so much, man. I appreciate the conversation.
Yes, sir.
Talk to you soon.
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right, man. You take it easy.
Enjoyed it. Peace.
All right, bye.
Bye. You've been listening to the Make It Podcast. To find more information about this week's topics, including links to relevant blog posts, projects, and indie creatives, please visit our website at www.bonsai.film. If you haven't already, you can join our podcast community on Apple Podcasts or the podcast app of your choice by searching for Make It Bonsai Creative, and the show will pop right up. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at _Bonsai Creative and Facebook by searching for Bonsai Creative. And of course, if you're looking to take a big step towards your filmmaking success, go to www.bonsai.film and click on Book Us to schedule a free discovery meeting and needs assessment. You have everything to gain. Until next time, be better, be creative, be engaged, and thank you for listening.